Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce, episode 29. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
That's one short of 30.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I'm the boyfriend.
You are? And
Actually, I do know what that means.
Mhm.
Every divorced and even single woman says they're always 29 years old.
This is true. You know, my mom always told me for years that she was always 29. And one day the neighbor asked, I mentioned it was my mom's birthday. She said, "Oh, how old is your mom?" I said, "Well, she's 29. And she started laughing, and she was laughing so hard. She had tears. She was hysterical. And I was really upset. I'm like, "Why are you laughing so hard? It's my mom's birthday." And she's like, "I think you need to go ask your mom how old she really is." And I went and stomping into the house, and my mom started laughing. Well, I didn't realize at the time because I was so young that my mom was 30 when she had me. So there was no way that she was 29.
Women.
Yeah, I was a bit naive. So
No, but that's what you hear. So,
I mean,
hey,
if that's what your mom's telling you, and you're 5 years old, that's what you're going to believe.
that's right.
Or you're 15. I don't remember how old I was. No, I was very young.
So, but episode 29.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yes. And if you want to send us an email and drop us a line, it's info@lifelaughterdivorce.com, or you can reach out to us. Stop laughing at me. Or you can reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, Life Laughter Divorce. Or Twitter is Laughter Divorce.
Send us feedback. However you can do it on any of those medias of socialness, just send us some feedback.
You can even rate, review, and subscribe. They're on iTunes or Stitcher.
Actually, I'm going to tell you, you have to rate, review, and subscribe us. Yeah.
It's a must.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me ask you a question.
All right.
So I was recently, someone asked me about, do I stay in touch with my exes?
Mm-hmm.
And being a non-married person and you don't really have all the financial and all the legal and all that stuff going on. I'm like, yeah, not really. I think there's only one or two that I kept in touch with. And now I don't really keep in touch with any of them.
Well, that's good to know.
Well, yeah, well, but I've dated nice people.
Yes, you have.
So it's fine.
I'm sure.
So have you kept in touch with any of your exes or even your ex-marriage, your
My
divorced husbands?
My ex-husbands, no. In fact, I think as soon as it was pretty much time where we were speaking to a lawyer, I don't think we ever spoke again.
Really?
Yeah. So it's been decades. As for like people I've dated, yeah, there are some, like we're still friends on social media or something like that.
So what's the difference between dating versus marriage? Why do you keep in touch with some of the ex-boyfriends versus ex-husbands?
Because nothing ever lasted longer than 2 months, so who cares?
Okay.
I mean, in comparison to marriage, it really didn't. It's not that there was. I'm digging myself in a hole here. I don't know. Just some people. I think too nowadays, because when I was married, actually, I might back this up. When I was married, there was no social media, right? So there wasn't an easy way to connect, unless you really made a point of reaching out to somebody. Whereas now, if you meet somebody and you go out on a date with them and it doesn't work out and you're friends on social media, I don't really think about unfriending people. I don't know. Maybe they've unfriended me. There have been some people I unfriended. And then years later, we friended back. And it's like, who cares? They're married, have children. Or, you know what I mean? Now it doesn't matter. Now we're just like
heals
friends.
all.
It does.
Yeah.
So I think the technology thing plays a big part in it. And keeping people connected, but
I also think that the reason, so when you go through a marriage, you've made a commitment, and something pretty bad had to happen to end that commitment. Mm-hmm. Versus a relationship. Sometimes we break up over stupid shit. Sometimes
in basic relationships.
Yeah, in just a basic relationship. So it's not as.
Right. And I think too,
friendship ending is maybe.
I think too, in basic relationship and like everyday relationships, and I'm talking non-marital ones, I think that I think there can be a significant amount of hurt. I think there can be much love and things there, but it is a different connection than when you've actually gone through a marriage together. It's just different. That's when you marry somebody, you have so many other things that are intertwined other than your emotions. You know?
Yeah, so like you said, the whole legal and finances and all these other things.
Even it's so different than just living with somebody, you know? So there's a lot of undoing and untangling to be had. And so I think there is that significant difference. And I think so, therefore, for me, it's been much easier to forgive people and move on and not care so much about what may have happened during that relationship. So it's easier to reconnect. But I think with a ex-husband, or an ex-spouse, that's much more challenging.
So the interesting thing to me now is both of your marriages were childless.
Right.
So there were no kids involved.
Right.
But what do you do when you have a kid?
Oh my goodness. Then you're going to have ties for life with that other person, because you're always going to have that common bond of another human being between you.
Right. So you have to reconcile to some extent to
You
be
would
able
think.
to keep some sort of relationship together for the child.
Right. Because it can be very, as well, when we talked to Kristen Sawyer a couple episodes ago, as she mentioned, it can be very damaging to a child having to, take sides or go through a separation like that, because it is very much a part of them as it is for the twosome. So yeah, there would have to be some sort of co-parenting or some sort of agreement to coexist.
Which can be difficult in certain cases and maybe not as difficult in others.
Correct.
But it all depends on the divorce and the reason for it, I guess.
Right. And so that can make it very challenging.
So tell us about our guest this week.
Our guest today is from the UK. He is in the midst of a challenging divorce, and him and his soon-to-be ex are working out their co-parenting techniques. So this was a really insightful interview because we get a firsthand account of just how challenging this can actually be. And I reached out to our guest, who goes by the name of Dad Solo, which I love. It's very Star Wars-like, isn't it? So he goes by Dad Solo. You can find him on Instagram at dad_solo or on his website at dadsolo.co.uk. And I was real happy about this because, boyfriend, you and I don't have any kids. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dad Solo. All right. Well, welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce podcast, Dad Solo.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
First of all, I want to comment how much that we love your name because it sounds very, very much like Han Solo from Star Wars. Han Solo.
Yeah, it does. It was. It actually was sort of a play on Solo Dad, and it started. I don't know, about 4 days after I split with my wife. We split on Christmas Day, and 4 days later, I was taking our kids, on the skiing, the planned family skiing holiday with another family who are friends of mine, and she suggested that I start a blog. She actually suggested I started a blog for teaching other dads to cook. Not suggesting that men can't cook, but there are a lot of guys out there, I guess, that can't. And that's how it started. So it was really, I was going to be this vlogging guy teaching guys how to cook for their kids. And that's where the sort of Solo Dad Solo came from. It never turned into that. But
So it never turned, no, it didn't. So
no, it turned me into being a ranting. In fact, it was about 6 months of me blogging my every thought about separation, kids, and dissecting what was happening to me. I then got so overwhelmed by doing it and ran out of time that it sat fallow for about a year and a half. And then I started on Instagram, sort of, I guess, I don't know, I think what started me doing it was the things have got to such a point with my ex that I almost wanted to not publicly embarrass her personally. I wanted to show for people to see what it's like in the, I don't know, can I swear?
Yes, of course.
The shit you put up with as part of the divorce process. and the stuff that people do. And I wanted, you almost get to that point where you want other people to see it. Not as I said, not to get at her personally, but just it happens. You hear it happens to so many people, and I wanted to give people a real slice. So that's why I screenshot some of the text messages that go back and forth between us and share them. Not to show her up personally, but to just show people the reality of what it's actually like.
Yeah, I've seen many of those.
Yeah.
And I I'm always thinking to myself, because the boyfriend and I, neither of us have children. So my experience was quite different, because once we split, we had no reason to contact.
I'm so envious of you.
Well, not necessarily, because you have kids.
Not, but, yeah.
Yeah, but it is challenging, and I see that with other people in my life. So that's something different. So we're very curious as to how you navigate that. First of all, going back a second, you said you guys split on Christmas Day?
Yeah.
Oh. Was that a surprise gift or?
Yeah, well, I don't know. A long time ago now. So I guess going back even further, we were, I don't know, do you one day wake up and decide that you are not happy and you don't love this person anymore, or do you slowly awaken? And I think for me, I slowly awoke to the person that my still wife is. And I'm not trying to say that I blame her, but or actually think she's a bad person at all. I think I changed. I don't think she changed. I don't think she's changed at all, actually. I think I slowly over time sort of ran out of patience and tolerance for her, lack of patience and tolerance for me, really, I guess. But she's got a lot of childhood issues that go back, and I guess they fester underneath. And I think that I was young when we were both young, but I was very young when we got married. And I think I thought that I could fix her and she was a challenge. And then, you have kids, and kids really is a real challenge. And you don't have time for to forgive the things that you can forgive. And I'm not trying to say that just because if you don't have kids, you should get on with it at all. But I just didn't have any more. I didn't have anything left to give in terms of accepting her issues, what is actually just her character. And so I guess over time I just started to awaken to it. And about 3 years before we split, 3 years before we split, I had sex with someone else, and she found out a while later, and we nearly split up then. And I think what I now realize was I was just so not ready for this process, because this process is horrendous. The only reason I stayed in that marriage for so long was because of how horrendous this situation is. And I think for a lot of people, possibly the only thing, the point where you decide to leave is the point at which anything worse than leaving is staying. And that's what it got to for me. And I think that was it. That was a turning point for me, because I think we went down this road after that where I accepted the blame entirely. And yeah, I'm not proud of doing it, but I think it was more indicative of where we were. And I totally caved in, and that was probably my window for us to change and really stand up and break out of this sort of controlling, counter-dependent relationship that we had, which is I sort of talk a bit about it on my Instagram, or talk about counterdependency, codependency, and the controlling thing. And I didn't break free of it. In fact, it became much, much worse. I accepted a label of having depression. And I think I accepted that because it explained why I'd done it, because that isn't really in my character. It certainly was at that point, and it gave me answers, never never mind everybody else. But it was a lovely label that explained why I'd done it. It explained to everybody else why I'd done it. It meant that I was less of an arsehole for people. And most importantly, my wife accepted it. And so we then went down this, but then we went down this road where I was the eternal fuckwit. And I don't know, does that term make sense to you in America?
I think I get the idea.
And and that was it. We were doomed then, because I was never going to we were never going to change our relationship dynamic. In fact, I'd poured petrol on a fire. And I think I woke up one day in Singapore in about July 2015. And it was like a eureka moment, and I decided that I was done. And then I set about a process mentally of extracting myself from that relationship, because it wasn't a relationship I could just walk out of. We had 2 children. We had a fairly complex financial situation. We had stuff going on with work, businesses. It was very involved, and it was one of the main reasons I'd probably avoided extracting myself sooner, is because there was so much stuff to unpick, and we are still unpicking it now. In fact, we're unpicking it to a forensic level in court. And I couldn't have done this 3 years ago. I wasn't strong enough. I had to. I have learned so much about myself, and I have now that I'm released, and it's like. We went to therapy together as part of all of this. And I remember the therapist 4 years ago saying to me, "You're like a little boy, and you need to," and I realized what she was saying to me now really was we had relationship problems, and I needed to start being an adult in the relationship, and she needed to stop treating me like a child. But we had this parent-child dynamic. And that's what I've done over the last year and a half. And I suddenly realized when I was free how controlled and, underwater I was, and suffocated. And now we're out of it. It's totally different for me. Yet one of the things I've sort of read is that you have to learn new behaviors when you separate, because the old behaviors don't work. That's why you've separated. But often it's one of you that changes maybe, and the other one doesn't. And we are in this position now where my ex thinks I am this person that I used to be, and thinks she wants the control. And it doesn't compute for her when she doesn't get why I don't do what she wants. And she still fights with me now. She just doesn't understand why I don't just say yes. And I'm not talking about major stuff. I'm just talking about even the fight we had last week on my Instagram, where our summer holidays in the UK work, where from about the last week of July, you have 6 weeks holiday. And despite legally in the UK, us having shared 50-50 parental responsibility, enforcing that is not nigh on impossible, but it is pretty much impossible as a guide to enforce it, because society supports the female, rightly or wrongly. You can't. I can go to my lawyer will write to hers. Her lawyer will ignore it. She will ignore it. I can take her to court, and a judge will not make a decision based on. It will have to be a scientific, or sorry, not scientific, but a very formal agreement. And you can't make formal agreement for kids, because they want to. Their things will crop up in their lives, and I think it's naive to think that you can say, right, every second Saturday they will be here, every second Sunday, because I don't run my life like that. So why would your kids?
Right.
But. I can't remember where I was going with this now. So last weekend. So the way we've ended up when things seemingly were going better, we were cooperating, but it was still basically she was going into our shared iCalendar and blocking off dates for herself, and I was then arranging my work around them, second guessing her so I could get to see my kids as equally as possible. But basically she would just dick me about, and she was quite happy with that scenario. And then slowly, as I started to sort of put my foot down and say, no, you can't just, you have to work with me and you have to cooperate, and you can't just go in and arbitrarily give yourself 2 weeks without any discussion. Equally, I'm not saying I'm going to say no. The courtesy is that I run every date past you. You don't run every date past me. You just assume autonomy over the children, which you don't have. But society goes, well, she's the mum, she knows what's best. But I would dispute that. I would say, and I'm not saying that I know best, but I think it's a shared thing. And this is the problem with when you've got 2 children or any amount of children with somebody, is you're going to have to work together. She does not communicate with me directly. She communicates through the kids, which I've repeatedly asked her not to do, because it's like rule 101 in that book, Joint Custody with a Jerk, which I've referred to several times. In fact, a lot of my stuff comes from is from there, or certainly inspired by that book. It's one of the best books I've read. I hand on heart.
Which is this book? What book is?
I'm hoping I won't lose you if I try and go into iBooks. It's called Joint Custody with a Jerk by Julie A. Ross and Judy Corcoran.
Yep. Okay.
Thoroughly recommend it. I've read quite a few books.
I know. I've seen it on your webpage.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I recommend that one. I mean, it doesn't deal too much with parental alienation, which co-parenting with a toxic ex is another good one for that. Mm-hmm. But this one, Joint Custody with a Jerk, is the best. I would suggest anybody who just wants to have children, has children, should read that book, because actually most of it's about how you communicate and bringing up empowered, confident children. And I would reckon there are bits in that book that I think every parent should read, not just separated parents.
Right. Well, that's really great to know. We'll definitely be sure to put that in the show notes for everybody to check out. Yeah, definitely. But, I do have a question for you. That you have so much information here. So, being in the UK, what are the general laws? Everybody typically gets 50-50?
No. So in the UK, if you're married, you by default have shared 50-50 parental responsibility. And I think I've got some on my Instagram. There's some. I've actually got the details from the UK government website. But basically, if you're married to the child's mother, you've got 50-50. If you're on the birth certificate, you've got 50-50. If you're neither of those, you can apply for it, but you need to get their consent, get the mother's consent. Sorry. There's some different rules depending on where you are in the UK. So Northern Ireland, Scotland, it varies slightly. But that's the fundamental gist of it. But it's almost a meaningless title, because I still don't have 50-50 access to my kids.
Really?
No, and I think I guess I'm averaging somewhere between 11 and 13 nights a month. Now I would, before we separated, I would have seen them. I don't know, 20 nights, maybe more, 25 nights a month. So it's very hard to go from being that much of an involved father to seeing them 11 nights a month. I mean, this month, I think with the spat we had last week, it would have gone down to 9. And it's hard.
Yeah, that's
really hard. The problem is that, like I said, society, I don't know if it's a male female thing or not, but you generally tend to it's that old thing about a woman scorned, and I don't know if it's just the way that men and women deal with things differently, and I'll sort of the differences in the sexes, but men possibly seem to accept things in a different way to women, and I don't know if that's what it is or not, but I certainly have met many people and spoken to many people now who've suffered the same sort of thing, where the children are used as emotional blackmail. They're used as a method of control or manipulation, certainly. And I've been, as part of the court process, you can go in the UK. There's there's a 1-day course, the single separated parents information program. And you can be ordered to go by court. And certainly the day I went, I was the only voluntary participant. And there was about, I don't know, a group of 10 parents. You never go to the same one as your ex-spouse.
Right.
And it's mixed men and women. And you basically, you talk through scenarios, you share experiences. And everybody, all the fathers in there were gobsmacked at how much I saw my kids.
Really?
And I was like, but it's not enough. It's not 50-50. I have to fight just to see them for the 11 nights. But these guys were seeing their kids like twice every 6 months, some of them, and it's because, and I don't know, the ins and outs of their particular situations, but it would appear that most people say to me, crikey, you've got it good. But for me, that feels like, I think that's such a shame that people think that what I actually have to the time I have to claw back with them, and the effort I have, the lengths I have to go to negotiate. And I say negotiate, we don't negotiate. I have to fight for that time. It feels very wrong for me. It doesn't feel just at all. And so you sort of, I was sitting in this course, or this program, this day-long program. And it seems to be a very common experience that guys, that the female, the mother, automatically takes charge of the children and is given the children by society. That, most men seem to end up leaving the family home.
Right.
And it's almost, I think, what happened to equality seems to go out the window at this point,
That's a good point. Well, in on these co-parenting workshops like you did for a day long, we recently had a guest on, Kristen Sawyer, who the episode is titled "We Are Family," and she talks extensively on the importance of co-parenting from a marital or from a therapist point of view.
Yeah.
And she said that that's something she highly recommends to every parent is the co-parenting workshops, and they're available more often than we would have thought they are, I guess.
The problem with that is you have to want to do it.
Right. Yes.
You have to, and I think what you'll probably see from my experiences is that my ex currently doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want me to exist.
Why? So what is the resistance there, you think?
She hates me.
Oh, no.
She hates me for, I think I think it's goes very deep through our relationship, and I think it goes beyond our relationship and into her past. She's angry at, I think there's childhood anger, latent anger coming out from her childhood. The relationship she had with her mother, her father's dead. I think there's a lot of stuff that's coming out now, and it's all, I am where it's directed because I am the perfect place to direct all this anger and not actually look at, somebody said to me that when you point the finger, there's always 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yes.
And I think that you need to look in the mirror, and I've done a lot, I have done an awful lot of this, and I've done a lot of work on myself since we separated. I had to, a lot of soul searching, and I really look back at what I was like, and I think, no wonder she's angry with me. A lot of her anger now is financial because she's been on a spending spree since we split. Like I said, it was a very controlling relationship. And the problem is that when you're having your access to your children restricted and you won't rock the boat financially, you will do whatever you're asked. So when she was saying, I'm going to go on holiday to New York for a week and you're going to pay, you say yes, because you want to see your kids. And the problem is, the reality now is that she's run up a massive debt, which is going to have to get sorted. And we have a certain amount of equity. We're lucky enough to have equity in our house. I know there's plenty of people that don't. And it's going to be eaten up on that. And the reality is that I cannot give her, she expects to separate and be better off than we were together. Her claim in court is more than our joint incomes put together, and her capital claim in terms of what house she wants is more than we could have afforded when we were together. So it's just unrealistic. You can't do that. And that's the one thing I would say is that when you split with somebody, you have to be realistic. And it's I realize you're losing all the hopes and dreams and the life you thought you were going to have. And you have to, and that takes time. I didn't leave for many years because I liked our house and I liked our lifestyle, and it would mean that, it would all have to change. But personal happiness goes way beyond that.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Oh, crikey. But so you have to learn that, but you have to be realistic, and you're now going to have to provide 2 homes between you, and 2 homes means 2 lives. You can't share shoes and clothes for kids. It doesn't work. You think it will, and it won't, because she won't like what you buy. You won't like what she buys. You have to have 2. They have to have 2 homes where they can walk in and out without having to take too much stuff between the 2 houses.
Right.
The worst thing I found is when they walk in here and they haven't got a specific toy that they did want to bring that they're very attached to. They have very treasured teddies at my house, which they don't take to their mum's house, and they don't bring stuff here. And when they do, I'm very conscious to try and make sure they go back, because there's nothing worse than a child in the middle of the night or whatever that wants this toy that isn't there. And there's a school of thought that says, that's a good way to teach them resilience and coping. But you got to balance that. You don't want to distress them too much. But
true.
So where I was really going is you have to then provide 2 homes. You cannot go, well, we'll just have 1 set of clothes and we'll share it. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So financially, you then you have to have 2 sets of school books, 2 sets of school uniforms, and the cost of that is
more than you think.
Much more than you think. So when you separate, you are going to have to now, pay 2 mortgages, 2 lots of rent, whatever, 2 sets of utility bills. You both probably need a car, and you will not have the same level of lifestyle that you had before. And this is where my ex and I diverge, because she likes money and she likes stuff, and she's very materialistic. And so I've been I hoped that she would spend the last 2 years or whatever, not quite that, becoming independent. She's got plenty of work opportunity to increase her earnings and take up the slack. But instead, she's decided to go on this sort of spending spree and rack up this massive amount of debt, because people have told her, I'll have to pay it off. I won't pay it off. We will. It will come out of our equity stake. And ultimately, it will cost our children, because it will mean that what was our marital home has to get sold. She'll probably, and a load of that will go off paying legal fees and her debt. And I just think that's a real shame.
Yes.
So I'd say to anyone, when you split up, be realistic. You will not win by going off on a spending spree to spite your ex-spouse. It doesn't work. You will both pay for it, and your children will. If you've got kids, your children will pay for it.
It sounds like you're going to save a lot of heartache and finances if you work together rather than fight each other on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think you were asking about co-parenting. So, and that's the other thing, is I think my wife thinks that once we're divorced, I will be dead.
Oh no!
I might be. I might have a heart attack, but I hope not. I'd like to.
I hope not.
I'd like to see the decree absolute, but that's the problem, and I feel like this latest rage that is on my Instagram really comes from the fact that she's not. The financial resolution that's looming is not to her taste, not by a long shot. And it's not being directed by me. It's being directed by the court process that we're in. And everyone is telling her, not a third party, I might add, not me, that she's not going to, what she wants doesn't exist. And this is what it's likely to look like. And she's thrashing about and lashing out via the children. But I sort of go, you surely can see this. You're an intelligent woman. Look at the facts. But look beyond that. You and I are going to have to get on and discuss our children. I have had no reply to my rather ranty text. It wasn't that ranty, maybe it was last weekend to her. And then I've sent a very long email, which is on Instagram because it's too long, where I just basically try and use some of the techniques in that joint custody with a jerk book to get her to see that we're going to have to work together. I want her to stop telling two young children her take on court, which isn't true, making assumptions about what my intentions are. I have no intentions beyond us both having a home, providing a home for our children, and it being pretty fair. And so, co-parenting wise, you've both got to want to do it, and you've both got to see beyond your own issues between the two of you.
Well, and the big message here is, what I'm hearing from you is be realistic. Was she in the past, before the separation and the divorce, was she fairly realistic with finances before then? No,
not at all.
Uh-huh.
No.
Okay.
No, and this is why I said to you, she's fairly materialistic.
So she's always been. This isn't necessarily new behavior.
one of the biggest contributing factors to us splitting up is I cannot carry her. I cannot cope covering up her spending and basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, and constantly, dealing with her excessive spending. Mm-hmm. It's tiring. I was just working more and more and more, trying to build a longer term future. And while my back was turned doing that, money was being spent in the short term. I would come home, there'd be new furniture, this had been bought, this holiday had been booked, and I was like, I've now got to work out how the hell I'm going to earn that money. Money was spent before it was earned, or before it was even a care was made about how it was going to be earned, and that was one of the biggest things, that finally, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
So no, she hasn't changed at all.
And how long has your divorce been going on exactly?
Right. Separation wise was Christmas 2015.
Okay.
I don't know what you do in the States, but in the UK, it's frowned upon if you don't try and go through mediation. So if you go straight to court in the UK, courts, I guess, is valuable time, and they view it as dimly if you can't sort things out or haven't at least tried to sort things out yourself. So we went into mediation. So I'd say for the first 6 months, you were in shock. I was in shock. We were in shock. We were dancing about, trying to be nice to each other, trying to work out, going through some therapy, trying to have this co-parenting relationship that we both wanted at the time. And so we started mediation in the middle of last year. And of course, it's, you have your first appointment, not much gets said in it, your expectations, what you both want. You're back in 3 weeks, a month later. The next month, one of the kids is ill, she can't come. It drags on and on and on. She pulled out of mediation when it started to get real about October last year, which was basically where the mediator turned around to her and said, you are not going to get the financial settlement you're asking for. It's unrealistic. It's not doable. And we paid a lawyer to do our mediation on the assumption that whatever agreement we came to could be legally ratifiable. So you have to, whatever agreement you come to, however you come to it, you have to take it to court and get them to rubber stamp it, and they won't rubber stamp anything. It has to be legally viable and reasonable. And so we went to a lawyer on the hope that they would steer us towards something that wouldn't get challenged in court. She walked out on that process, went to her lawyer. Then Christmas and New Year happened last year, so that slows things down. And then it ended up with me having to go via my solicitor to challenge her to petition me for divorce, because she said she was going to do it. 2 months later, she still hadn't done it. And you then are stuck. You can't drag someone by their hair to court. Yeah. So you have to somehow instigate the process. And I did it by my solicitor, and she did it. She eventually petitioned me, and then it's about 3 months till you get notified of your first court date. When we got notified, it was another 3 months to our first court date. So 6 months after she petitioned, Then our next court date should have been in September, but it's not till November.
Wow, this is a really long process.
It's epic. Yeah.
No wonder.
The only people that win are the lawyers.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, no wonder it's like a roller coaster, because just when you think you're getting closer, you're getting farther. And and anything could happen. If there's an upset in the middle, then that changes the game of what you're negotiating.
It does. So we, I'm having to go via my solicitor to try and tackle her over what happened last week with the kids. And it won't delay things. It just adds more letter writing, more money. And it's tiresome, because at the end of I dropped the kids off this afternoon, and I was going to not challenge her, but I was going to say, are we going to talk about the kids? But she very cleverly manages to put 2 children and 2 dogs in between me and her in a doorway. And I'm not going to challenge her in front of the kids. I'm also concerned about what she's going to do with them tonight and what she's going to say. The holiday that we've just had is the first time my new partner's come with us, and I think it's going to be unsettled enough. I don't want to rock the boat anymore. So how do I get her she's ignoring me. We haven't got any child access agreements beyond September. We are in a massive disagreement over how we should be organising, making child arrangements. And she's talking to them about the legal process. She's telling them stuff that is not age appropriate and stuff that isn't true. How do I deal with that if she won't reply to me? And I have not been aggressive with her. I am like, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to talk to each other. I don't want to talk to you. I'd quite happily never deal with you again, but we're going to have to. That's the way it is, and that's what I'd say to people again, that are going through this process. You've got to be realistic about money, and you have to accept the fact that your children love you both. They need both of you. And one of you cannot give them what they need, all of what they need. So
knowing that you're in this situation where she has completely different expectations and a completely different perspective on what reality is and is not, what are your options going forward as to handling this
with kids or money?
Both.
Money's fine. Money's court. Money is a legal process. It's very defined. It's easy enough. You might not get what you want, but basically someone's going to look at what you have, what you owe, work out how to do what you both need, and it's going to get divided. And they're going to say, you're going to have this, you must pay this per month, and that'll be it.
So you feel confident in the legal process there that they're going to make sure it's fair and good?
Yeah, I think my solicitor is very. She says that the law has changed a lot in the last few years, let alone few decades, and it's certainly not one of these. The woman takes the house, everything, and he gets left in a bedsit. So I'm fairly confident it'll be fair. It probably won't be what I want, and it certainly won't be what she wants, but it'll be somewhere in the middle. And do you know what? You just got to get on with it at some point. I just want it done now.
Right.
Kids-wise, very difficult, because what do you ultimately, I would like us to either month on month or 6 monthly look at the calendar and go, what have you got any plans, or what significant things have we got in our lives coming up? Right, let's put those in. How would you like to divide this? How would you like to do it? Do you want to do it in week on, week off? Do you want to do it or do you want to be a bit more flexible? And basically, I would like an operating principle of as close to half 50-50 as we can get, but be a bit flexible with each other. Things crop up. Yeah, okay, a night here, a night there. And I think that's the best way to do it for the kids, because the kids need you to cooperate. Now, I don't know many people that have that. So next step back is you're slightly more formalized and you go, right, so in principle, do you have, should we do 5 days on, 5 days off, or whatever? But if you go to court, in trying to get an access arrangement or sort of some kind of residency, it's going to be every other weekend and the second and fourth Wednesday. That's what guys get in the UK. And I don't want that, because that's going to be hard for her, hard for me, hard for them.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be Wednesdays when they want to do, and someone's going to lose out. You can't put a fixed, no more than I could suggest to you as an adult, that every other weekend you will go to this house. That is where you will go. And then the rest of the time you'll go here and live in this house. You're going to go, well, oh, but I want to go away that weekend. Well, sorry, you can't, because that's the weekend you've got to go and live in that house. It wouldn't work for you. So how's that going to work for kids?
Right.
Our lives are not digital.
Right.
So that's what you get. But how do you make an arrangement? Do you go to court and a judge is not going to say you must be flexible with each other and give each other 50-50 and be really nice to each other? Because who's going to enforce that? How are you going to
how do you enforce that? Right.
Yeah. And I'm told that time heals and things change, and when new partners come on the scene, agendas and motivations change. So all I am holding out for is once the financial resolution's done and it's sorted out, because being told what you're going to do with houses and then enacting it's another thing. Once that's all done, the fallout of house sales, etc., is done, I hope that she'll have less to then hold on to. It will be done. It's a bit like this is her final hurrah. This is her chance to fuck me over and get her own back for all that anger. And once that's done and she's had that, it's gone. Her chance, that time has passed. And I'm hoping that she will then calm down and acknowledge that we're going to have to co-parent, because I get nothing. We do not communicate over our children. I can't believe how much we don't communicate. I find out they're ill from them. I find out about it was a point a few weeks ago or about a month ago where we had another big issue that I went to my solicitor, where I was being told by the kids, or messages were being sent to the children on their iPods, which were actually meant for me, with me copied in. So it'd be like, hello girls, blah, 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 blah. I'll pick you up at 4. And it's like, all right, so you're picking them up at 4 then, and that's how I find out. It's like, stop communicating via the kids.
Right, because that's got to be challenging with them. How are they responding to this?
That's largely over their heads at the moment, I think.
We should probably say around what age are your children?
Oh, they're 8 and 6.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
That's okay. I just realized, I know because I follow you, and I'm like, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah, they're 8 and 6. They're about to 9 and 7. So they're okay. The youngest is better because I think I think younger kids are slightly less. I don't know, it's probably her character actually, but I think she's a little bit younger, a little bit more resilient. The eldest one has more emotional pull. She's more sensitive. And so she's aware of that this goes on a bit. And the other thing with kids, I think, is that if we were together, you don't want to let your children tell you what happens. I think the message you want really for children is that adults make the decisions, that their views and their needs and wishes are taken into account, but ultimately adults work out what's going to go on, and they'll be looked after. The problem with giving them choice is it seems like a really great idea, but you're turning them into a friend. And the issue with that is that will bite you at times when they don't want to do what you want them to do. And I think you have to be careful giving children control is what I'm really saying, I think. Yeah. And so I think my wife it's great at the moment because our eldest does what she wants and she's her best friend and she's like a little teenager when she's with her. The problem is that that seems like a great idea, but what happens when you go around and we're going to do this? She says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Or I'm very careful not to ask them if they want my new partner to come I say, what should we do when she comes? So they can have the choice. They can have some choice, but they don't have full choice, because I don't want them thinking that if they decide they don't like her, that they're going to stop me having a relationship. I have sacrificed an awful lot for them for the last 20 months. And actually that we've been really lucky. And I think that sacrifice and patience has paid off, because they love her and it's brilliant.
Nice.
But I'm very cautious that you don't want, but what my wife does with who I presume is her new partner, although she hasn't told me, is gives them the choice. And that's fine. It's that what's she going to do when they turn around and go, actually, I don't want him to come.
Right. And they have to respect that you are an adult and in charge of what's going on in your life.
And I get it. It's like, I don't want to do that, Dad. It's like, well, or on holiday, I just want to do this a day. Well, that's fine. It's that there are, 4 other people on this holiday, and you don't get to decide everything that happens,
Right. You're still a parent. And I think that's an important dynamic. One of the things I'm curious about is how far away do you and your ex live from each other? Are you like within walking distance, or is it quite a...
Yeah, no, we are in walking distance. She is, as the crow flies, about a mile.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. It's not good. It's fine.
Sometimes it's too much. Yeah. And I would think, not being in the situation, and not having contact with my ex, I think the farther the better. But in the case of children, that's got to be a blessing in so many ways.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of people that live, hundreds of miles from their children or from their ex. And that's where life takes you sometimes. My wife is from Scotland, and she has on many occasions threatened to try and attempt to take them back to Scotland. I was going to say good thing about that. The thing about that is that's a different legal jurisdiction, because the UK is the UK, but England, Scotland and Wales are different countries. Mm-hmm. So she's trying to take them into another country, so I can legally challenge that. So that's quite hard for her to do. But, she could take them to the border, which, 400 miles away. Oh. And that happens. So living a mile away is great. It's not necessarily practical for everybody. And I think by sheer luck, she doesn't want to go at the moment, and she wants to stay in this city. So it is really good. It makes logistics very easy. It does make, like, they've gone back to her tonight, and they're coming back to me tomorrow. So it makes it very easy, the fact that I've just got to be around tomorrow. They get dropped off tomorrow.
Well, I would think too for school purposes, but no matter where they're staying, it makes it easy for them to still see their friends and still be in the same neighborhood.
Because that's where you do have to consider your kids, because they actually have a life of their own. And I think that's another thing that parents can fall into the trap of possibly thinking that their kids' lives revolve around their parents, and they don't. They do have their own lives. They have their own friends, and I want them to be able, and I know that they have friends that go to their mum's house and they come here as well. And that is really important. And if you live a considerable long distance away, that's quite difficult to do. I mean, kids are kids, they'll make friends. So you'll be able to have a group of friends wherever you live. So I wouldn't say, think, oh my God, I live 300 miles away. It's a big issue. It's not. They'll have friends at your house, like they have toys. But for school friends, it is good living close by. And I've always been a dad that was involved in school runs and school, very, very active in their everyday life. And so I actually live nearer to their school than my wife does. And that's really important to me, being able to take them to school. I don't want to be a weekend dad. I want to be able to take them to school, be there to pick them up, take them to clubs, do the everyday stuff, not just the weekend stuff. And you can only do that if you can live in the same place. But that's difficult again, because I would quite happily not live close to her. In the same way, I'm sure you don't want to live close to your ex.
Right.
So this is the double-edged sword. This comes back to the fact that when you have kids with somebody, as somebody once put it to me, you're inextricably linked to that person for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and you're going to be haunted by that person. And I think my new partner's aware of that. Is the fact that she's probably reminds. I'm quite I think I'm quite easygoing, and but she says you're going to be putting up this shit for years. I guess I turn a blind eye to that reality.
Right.
But I guess the thing is, when you've got kids, that's the other thing is when you don't have kids with somebody and you separate, the chances, if you live in the same town, the chances of you bumping into each other in a restaurant or a cafe are quite high.
Right.
Whereas we never bump into each other, luckily, because usually if I've got the kids, or if the kid, I hate that term, I hate possession. If the children are with me, then we're doing family stuff and she's probably out doing adult stuff. And if the kids are with her, she's got the kids doing family stuff and I'm probably out doing adult stuff. So the paths don't cross. So it's quite nice.
Right. Well, this has been wonderful hearing your point of view and your experience going through it, because, this is something, again, the boyfriend and I have not gone through, and we've heard other guests kind of talk about. But you're right in the midst of it. And I have to say that I'm very impressed with your powerful language of just little things like you just did, like switch the wording. I don't have the kids, I'm with the kids.
I hate that. It's one of my real bugbears.
Yes, I love that. You're very super aware. And I think that's really important. It sounds like you've done a lot of research and a lot of reading.
Yeah, I've solicited a lot of advice from various places. I reckon the books I've referred to in my Instagram, which you can link to this, I really recommend. The Joint Custody with a Jerk is brilliant. Mm-hmm. For parents, full stop, not just for separated parents. And in fact, most of it isn't about being separated at all. It's probably about learning to communicate and bringing up kids that can solve their own problems. Hand on heart, recommend that. And a lot of my stuff comes from that. And a lot of it I've just kind of learned, I guess, as you go along.
Yes. No, I think it's so wonderful and very helpful. It's also very interesting hearing it. You live in an entirely different country. Here, a lot of the states on divorce and separation vary from state to state, depending on where you reside, similar to where you're at. But we haven't heard it from that perspective. And it's quite interesting. And, hindsight is always 2020. Looking back, right? Looking back, is there one thing in particular that you're like, if there was one thing that I could have started this off differently with, what would that be?
It's an interesting question. I guess it's going to be hard. Whatever way you do this, there's a line in one of those books that says the very act of taking your joint life and separating it in two is traumatic. It's going to be really hard, and you've got two options. You can get on with it, or you can do what we've done and procrastinate and drag it out. And I would say that I allowed it to snowball, the finances, by I enabled her to continue taking no responsibility. And ultimately, it is making this process harder now, because she's now, it's like a child having its toys taken away and she cannot cope with it. And I've just enabled that situation and just deferred the inevitable. So I would suggest that, I would say for me, I wish I'd been harder sooner. I wasn't harder because she had the children, literally did physically have them. She was possessing them. But actually, she's still doing it to me now, 20 months later. And all I've done is, slowly started to stand up to her. So I would possibly wish I'd been harder sooner, stuck up for myself. I had nothing. Looking back on it, I had nothing to lose, because we'd still be where we are now, with her throwing her toys out the pram, using the children. Yet we could actually be divorced, and we probably could have saved a lot of money. I probably could have stopped her going into all this debt.
Right.
So I would say that I was. If you find, as a guy, or I don't know, I've said this, maybe it isn't men and women, but if you find yourself in that position where you're having your children held from you, allowing that to happen and backing down and rolling over will only perpetuate and further allow that snowball to gain momentum. Just get on with it. If you are genuinely separating and going to get divorced and this is it, get on with it.
Right. No, I think that's good. That's good advice. So this is great. And you know, just to recap, you have your Instagram account, which we've talked about several times, at Dad Solo. And also you have a fabulous website that you started, and you had mentioned to me that you started it because you were blogging, right? That's
and I am going to start blogging. I started today on the flight home, actually. So yeah, I'm going to start blogging, because I think some of these experiences that I'm now in are worth sharing, really. And that's the only reason I do it. I share it because it is an experience, and I want people to see what it's like, really, I guess. You know, problem shared is a problem halved and all.
Yes, and you do have some good cooking tips on there, by the way. I know that's how this all started. So what we'll do is we'll be sure to put all of your contact information for your website, for your Instagram, so that people can follow and check you out. That's okay, right?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, wonderful. And I really appreciate you taking the time out to be a guest. I know it's late there. And
no, it's cool.
You just
I've got no kids tonight. It's fine.
Oh, you do? Okay. Do they know?
No, I don't have them. No, they're not here.
Oh, you don't?
Their mums tonight. No,
okay.
Cool.
So do your kids know you're going to be on a podcast?
No, certainly not. Although when you asked me, I was sat on a balcony at the hotel, and I did say, and my eldest walked out and was like, "What's that, Dad? You're going to be on a podcast?" I was like, "Oh shit." He was like, "I can't." I was like, "What's it about?" I was like, bringing up two children as a dad on their own."
Someday they'll be able to listen to it.
Oh, God, no.
No, it's been so helpful and very insightful. So I think a lot of our listeners will definitely benefit from your experience and knowledge. And thank you so much again for sharing.
No, pleasure.
Absolutely.